The king and the king beyond the wall met in the shadow of a dying hearth, its embers banked low against the bitter nights that strangled Castle Black. Storms rattled the shutters like mailed fists, howling down from the frostfangs with the promise of teeth and hunger. But within the old steward's tower the air held only wary quiet. Stannis Baratheon stood rigid beside the table, one gauntlet hand resting on the smooth, scar-scarred map of the north. Opposite him Mance Rayder lounged with a bard's careless grace, boots propped on a chair, eyes picking bright sparks from every reflection of fire and steel. The walls pressed close, age-blackened timbers, the lingering stink of tar and pitch, and that unspoken tension that swells when men of will share a room too small for both their prides. "You will not wear that fool's crown," Stannis said at last, voice clipped, iron-edged. "Not beneath my banners, nor before my men. A king cannot march with another king at his side. There is but one lord's place in the vanguard." Mance's smile flickered, a moth's wing brushing flame. "Crowns? You mistake me. Those bones were for show, wildlings love their trinkets. But Winterfell," he leaned forward, boots thudding to the floorboards. "Winterfell is meat and bread. You need men who know snow like other armies know fields. And I need walls thick enough to keep the others chill from my people's bones. Let your banners fly higher, Lord of Dragonstone. I will march in your shadow, so long as that shadow falls across Winterfell's towers." Stannis studied him as one might study a blade whose temper remained uncertain. Jon Snow, standing half a pace behind his king, had counseled this parley, and now watched with the taut silence of a bowstring strung too long. Davos Seaworth shifted near the door, smelling of salt and old smoke, ready to intercede if words hardened to swords. But it was Melisandre, crimson in the gloom, who finally broke the waiting hush. "Two flames may burn brighter together," the priestess said, ruby at her throat pulsing as if in time to a hidden heart. Azor Ahai was no fool. He forged alliances of fire and shadow when the first darkness rose. "The Lord's light shows me towers in white storm, banners of stag and spear entwined, and a dire wolf howling at the heart of night." Stannis's jaw clenched at mention of prophecy, yet he nodded once, knife quick. "Very well, we ride at dawn. But break faith with me and I shall hang your body from Winterfell's walls for the crows to chew." Mance only shrugged, as though threats were winter snow on a bard's cloak. "I have seen worse ends promised over worse ale. Give the order, Southron King, and I'll bring you a host born of ice and wind." The yard of Castle Black stirred before sunrise, torches bleeding orange onto the unmoving curtain of night. Free folk gathered in loose knots. Mammoth hunters whose skin carried tusk-inked sigils. Women in patchwork furs muttering charms as they armed their sons. Spearwives nursing babes soon to taste Southron air. Giants, hulking silhouettes, watched with eyes wet as dawn pools, their low rumbles carrying sorrow and anticipation alike. To the Night's Watch brothers, still few and ragged, it seemed a dream half-remembered. Wildlings and black brothers loading wagons together, Stannis' queen's men drilling between rangy thens. Jon moved among them, cloak billowing, ghost pacing silent at his heel. He had spoken with Tormund Giantsbane, spoke of oaths, hostages exchanged, the long road to Winterfell. Val, wildling princess some named her, bent her head to whisper that the wind smelled of change, of blood thawed on steel. He felt it too, the north awakening like a bear from hibernation, hungry and ill-tempered. When horns finally brayed, the host spilled from the wall's shadow, a serpent of firepots and flickering banners, its scales men and giants, horses and sleds. Stannis rode at the head, chill crown of black iron and red gold clasped above a face carved from frost. But beside him now trotted Mance upon a rangy northern Garin, unhelmed, cloak of crow feathers swirling like the night itself. No bones crowned him, only the wind sang of his kingship. South they rode beneath gray dawns. Frost-coated pines broke before them. Frozen streams shattered under sled runners. At Queenscrown they camped amid tumbled stones where once a boy king had watched his world dissolve, and there they counted their numbers. 3,000 free folk fit to bear axe or spear. 500 queen's men sworn by the fire god. Fewer than 100 watched and sworn brothers of the Night's Watch, those not needed upon the wall. Giants numbered 40, and their mammoths 20, though the beasts frothed misery at southern cold. They will be arrow fodder in moated fields, Ser Godry Faring muttered, eyeing the mammoths with disdain. Yet even arrows may break upon a mountain's hide, Jon replied, gaze never leaving the shaggy titans. He saw more than beasts. He saw battering rams alive with rage, the terror they would sow in Bolton hearts. It was the Boltons who held Winterfell now. Ramsay Snow, legitimized as lord, kept Theon Greyjoy as pet and trophy, while his father Roose wove plots wider than a weirwood's roots. The North bent fearful knee, yet fires still burned in secret hearts from White Harbor to the Rills. Stannis meant to be that fire given shape. At dawn on the 7th day they came upon the ruins of Deepwood Motte, burnt when Ramsay's reavers passed. Smoke still clung to shattered stone. A dozen heartless poles jutted like dead stalks where bodies once twisted. The free folk muttered, remembering dead villages north of the wall, remembering Craster's Keep and worse. It was Mance who ordered the poles raised, his knife flashing to cut ragged ropes. The gesture drew many eyes. That night, around a fire red as memory, Jon found himself beside Mance. The wildling king plucked softly at a stringy lute, shaping chords like drifting snowflakes. Song before storm, he said. Always give them a tune to carry into the dark. I remember you played in halls of the Watch once, Jon murmured. As a brother. And I played the loyal knight not poorly. Mance's smile held wistful ache. But walls make the world small. And crowns. He flicked a broken string. They weigh heavy, heavier than furs and bone rings. Jon studied him. Why help Stannis truly? You could have slipped away, led your people east of the mountains. Help Stannis. The smile sharpened. I help my own. An empty promise of peace is still peace if I can make it real. My folk have bled too often for songs other kings sing. Let this Southron, grim as an ice wraith, wage his war. I'll make sure when the snows settle my people sit hearth-warm inside stout stone, not gnawing bark beneath the wind. Jon thought of Winterfell's godswood, of dire wolves carved in pale wood and snow drifting on still pools. Winterfell is my sister's birthright, he said, and I'd see her keep it if fate allows, Mance answered, strumming a final whisper chord. But fate favors those who bargain well. To win Winterfell, bargains alone were ash and wind. So the march bent west toward the Rills, where Lady Dustin's men prowled the forests, hunters taught stealth by moss and marsh. Stannis sent Davos under truce banner to parley in the ruin of Barrow Hall. It was not swords Davos carried but tales, of moons clad in snow and walkers of glass, of a wall of ice that held back death. He spoke of kings burning for cold gods and children frozen to blue statues. Lady Dustin listened, a wolf's wariness in her smile, then asked what Stannis would grant a daughter of Ryswell. The Onion Knight returned with oaths sealed by handshake and promised lands peeled from Bolton fury. Thus the host swelled. Flint spearmen crept from Flint's finger, fisherfolk of Stony Shore brought boats for the moat, and skirmishers from Bear Island. Twanisker women garbed in green, joined with growls of the North remembers. Each campfire forged them tighter, yet each alliance cost coin, or future promises, or a shaving of Stannis's pride. On mist-slaked moors south of the Bar-Rollins, scouts brought dire news. Ramsay had quit Winterfell to ride against them with 600 mounted scourges, flayed man banners cracking like whips above snarling dogs. He means to break us before we reach his walls, Godry Faring claimed. Mance's laugh rolled soft and lethal. Let him. Dogs chase a feast until the feast grows teeth. He unfurled a rough map on a slate of bark, drawing a broken circle. There lay an abandoned crofter's village ringed by soggy earth, 2 stone bridges the only approach. Bolton rides hard, drives his curs faster. We spill a little blood on the road, leave sign of fear. Then we wait in the mire. Stannis considered, eyes narrowing like knife slits. A retreat is not my way. It is a lure, not a flight. Mance tapped the map. Let your knights hold the western bridge. My spearwives take the east. Giants will stand unseen in the marsh until horns sound. When the Bolton line pushes, the giants rise, the bridges break, and Ramsay's hounds drown in muck. And so the trap was set. Snow fell thick as feathers the night before, muting every sound save the restless breath of mammoths. Jon rode the perimeter with Tormund, exchanging quiet jests to hide dread. In dawn's first glow, a Bolton outrider came within bowshot. Ragged cloak flaying in wind, saw the empty wagons, the hasty footprints, and spurred back to his rabid lord. As noon paled, Ramsay's host thundered down the road, banners like bleeding mouths. They charged the western bridge first, horseflesh thundering on stone. Godry's knights met them shield-locked, but fell back by design, feigning break. Ramsay laughed, the laughter carrying across still water like steel on stone, and pressed forward, cavalry crowding the narrow span. On the east, wildling spears jabbed, then scattered into reeds, luring flanking riders across the second bridge. Ramsay's banner surged midway when the first horn blew, a deep giant's note that shivered spine bones. Great Scales, eldest of his kin, rose from marsh like a living hill, swinging a tree trunk club once. Stone cracked, the bridge folded into black water, pulling horses screaming beneath. On the western crossing, Mag the Lesser heaved with twin mammoths, chain-rigged, and the arch shattered under pounding legs. Bolton knights spilled like dice. Panic unmade their cohesion. Ramsay's hounds dragged men from saddles, biting anything that moved. Then warriors lunged from fog with bronze-headed axes. Bear Island archers rained steel, their war cries fierce as gulls. In the rout, Ramsay fought free, face splattered red, and spurred a fresh horse up a wooded incline. But ghost-white shadows spilled from pines, Lady Dustin's riders blocking flight. They took 20 prisoners, but not Ramsay. The bastard slithered through snow and vanished into ragged dusk. The battle cost Stannis 80 men, a giant felled by coral storms, 2 mammoths broken in water. But over 300 Bolton riders lay dead or dying, their Dreadfort banners spiked upside down in muck for carrion crows. When campfires crackled that night, there were fewer eyes narrow with mistrust between free folk and kneelers. Blood spilled together is mortar stronger than stone. Yet Winterfell remained to win, its cold towers rising like talons above white hills. The castle's walls were thick and ancient, moats wide, and within roost a garrison of Karstarks and Manderleys sworn to roost not by love but by blades at their throats. Stannis convened war council in the Crofters' long hall, its roof half gone, snow swirling through broken rafters. Candles guttered on a makeshift table crowded by maps, pine cones marking towers, river stones marking hosts. Davos recited numbers, 2,000 inside Winterfell, half again on foraging patrols. Food enough for months. Siege is folly, said Ser Richard Horp, fingers drumming hilt. Before we starve them, the snows will starve us. Then we storm, growled Godry Faring. At first light, storming near walls built by the first men? Jon shook his head. Storming loses half your army in an hour, and the heart of winter is coming. Mance whittled a willow stick, shavings piling like snowdrift. Walls keep men out, but doors let them in. I have men who climbed the wall. Winterfell's curtain is child's play to such fingers. Stannis folded arms, expression chiseled. Speak plainly. For nights from now the moon wanes to sliver. Your camp will advance banners and fires as if preparing siege from the south. Bolton eyes will fix there. Meanwhile, 6 climbers, roped in pairs, take the north face where shadows pool. Once inside, they unbar the hunter's gate. Giants rush, mammoths batter, wolves among sheep. And who, Davos asked, will lead these climbers? Mance set down the stick. Who better than the man they once called Crowslayer? Silence bloomed. The red woman's eyes gleamed like coals beyond smoke. Stannis spoke at length only with a nod, yet that nod held the weight of pact sworn in flame. Preparations were swift. Leather-soled shoes soaked in pitch for grip, hooks forged from bog iron, rope plaited from hemp and hair. Jon selected the 6 wildling climbers whose hands bore more scars than fingers. Tormund volunteered but was too broad. Val argued yet remained to rally children. When the 3rd nightfall bled out, the climbers set forth, skirting hedges under cloak of snow flurries. Mance carried no steel save a bone-handled dirk and a lute wrapped in oilcloth, his tools of war finely tuned. Jon watched them vanish into dark and felt as though ghosts slipped through his ribs. Ghost nudged his hand. The direwolf's snout steamed in frosty air. At first light, Stannis' ranks assembled within sight of Winterfell's southern gate, but beyond arrow range. Siege lines sprawled like script across blank parchment. Catapults, mantlets, giants lumbering with felled trunks. Ramsay, returned before dawn, rode walls laughing at such display, hurling insults tied to flayed men's hide. His archers loosed for sport. Shafts clattered harmless among shields. Yet Stannis did not advance. He waited as a patient smith waits for iron to glow the perfect cherry red. Dusk crept. Fires of the camp painted swirling snow gold. Drums beat a slow, doom-laden cadence. Within Winterfell towers, watchmen shuffled, weary, eyes stinging from sleet. In the blind quarter beneath the broken tower, once Bran Stark's fall, 6 shadows melded against weather-smoothed stone. Fingers probed for holds, hooks kissed cracks, and the climb began. Mance's breath plumed soft. He felt the castle's pulse through chilled stone. Memories of Stark kings, of treachery and tenderness. Higher they climbed. Past a barred window where servant girls whispered. Past a murder hole where hot sand once slept. At the parapet edge, a Karstark guard whistled. Bored. A silent dirk blossomed beneath his chin. He sagged without cry. Inside was gloom, corridors lined with hounds' pelts, the stink of Ramsay's cruelty. They passed a chamber where a boy sobbed, flayed back red. Mance spared him a glance of pity, then pressed on. At the hunter's gate, they found 2 guards dicing.
Steel flashed, dice scattered crimson.
Bolts slid free, great timbers groaned. Mance raised his lute, plucked one taut note that rang along stone like fate's chime. Without, giants roared. The gate yawned. What followed was less battle than tempest. Mammoths hurtled through archways, tusks shattering doors. Giants swung chains, flinging men like dolls. Spearwives skittered across ramparts, severing bell ropes before alarms could clang. Stannis' knights flooded the gate behind the giants. Shields locked, Baratheon stags aflame on surcoats. Jon fought at Davos's right, Longclaw shedding pale arcs through torchlight. The direwolf ghost darted ahead, white death amid chaos. Ramsay's dogs answered with snarls. Kennelmen loosed them in droves. But hunger and fear made better allies than leashes. The hounds turned on archers, tearing soft throats. Courtyard fires caught in straw pens, sending sparks swirling into night. Amid smoke, Jon glimpsed a thin form in torn finery. Theon Greyjoy clutching a butcher's cleaver, eyes hollow as haunted halls. He vanished into corridors before Jon could call. Bolton loyalists rallied beneath the broken tower. Roose himself, pale and watchful, organized a shield wall. His voice cut through din, cool, emotionless, a surgeon commanding an amputation. The Karstarks hesitated, half unsure which wolf to serve, yet fear tethered them to their grim allies. Arrows blackened the air. One stuck Ghost's flank. The direwolf yelped, staggered but kept running. Giants waded into the shield wall, but Roose had men armed with heavy axes to hamstring. A giant bellowed agony, knee split, yet crushed 3 men beneath his fall. Davos led a charge to relieve them, onion sigil gleaming where snow melted on his breast. Jon followed, parrying an axe, feeling the thrum of living battle as if it were his own heartbeat. Somewhere in that carnage, Mance played. He stood astride the battlements, lute singing a wild, terrible tune, half dirge, half anthem. Every rise of note coaxed courage from allies, shook dread into foes. Archers knocked to silence him, but their hands slipped, strings snapped. Melisandre, below, eyes ablaze, raised arms as though his notes were sparks for her unseen fire. And then the heart of Winterfell changed hands. It began when a Bear Island woman named Jarell Mormont slew the Karstark captain in single combat outside the Great Hall doors. Karstark men, seeing their captain fall to a woman roaring, "The North remembers," wavered. A spearwife named Nella tossed one a Stark banner, the grey direwolf on white, shouting that the old blood called them home. Swords turned, shields reversed. Roos's flank dissolved like hoarfrost. Roose Bolton withdrew inside the hall, barricading, yet fire bit through roof beams set alight by giants wielding flaming pitch from toppled braziers. Smoke spilled. Men coughed blood and ash. When the doors burst, Roose stood alone upon the dais, pink blade Dreadfort steel glimmering under torch flare. Stannis advanced, flames dancing on his crown. They spoke not a word. Swords greeted in shower of sparks. Roose moved like slithering ice, Stannis like thunderous hammer. Twice they clashed, step for step around a long hearth choked with embers. On the third pass Davos's voice rang, a single warning, and Roose misstepped upon embers spilled. Stannis's blade found gap in mail above hip, blood steamed. The Lord of the Dreadfort collapsed, eyes wide, mouth shaping a final quiet protest. So fell the Leech of the North. Ramsay, seeing the tide, fled through hidden kennels with scarce 50 riders. Snow and dark swallowed him, but Winterfell was won. Dawn rose pale violet over towers crusted black by smoke. Snowmelt dripped from murdered crenellations. The corpses of Boltons and broken alliances lay sheeted in white. Stannis held audience in the shattered Great Hall, roof half collapsed, yet banners of stag and direwolf hung side by side upon makeshift poles. He acknowledged Karstark and Manderly lords kneeling anew, though he exacted oaths with the stern eye of a smith judging iron for flaws. When all had knelt, Stannis turned to Mance Rayder. Silence deepened, crackling, uncertain. The free folk king bore no crown, only the lute slung across shoulder, blood drying on its tarnished wood. "For deeds done," Stannis declared, voice ringing across sundered rafters, "I name Mance of the free folk sworn ally of the Iron Throne, free to lead his people from the wall to the gift, lands granted in perpetuity so long as they keep the king's peace." Mance inclined his head. "A gift of stone and snow may yet bloom. We will keep our end." "And I," Jon Snow said, stepping forward to kneel, "swear as Lord Commander of the Night's Watch that no blade of mine will bar free folk seeking refuge south, so long as they hold back the darkness beyond." Melisandre's ruby pulsed, casting blood-red dots upon fallen snow. "All flames burn brighter in union," she whispered. Yet behind such pledges whispered other currents. Stark banners hung, but without Stark lords to stand beneath them. Sansa, Arya, Rickon, names spoken as prayers before sleep. In distant holdfasts, Karstark warbands nurse resentment. And somewhere in the White Wilds, Ramsay flays prisoners, plotting vengeance. The siege was won, but winter's war had only begun. Beyond the eastern walls, in soft drift beneath a weirwood's skeletal boughs, Theon Greyjoy knelt beside a shallow grave freshly hewn. He buried shards of a flayed man banner, hands shaking. Snowflakes kissed his cheeks like absolution. When he rose, the face that once bore the name Reek seemed washed of some hidden stain. He turned south, footfalls light as falling ash, toward a dawn not yet broken. Thus dawned a new order in the north. A union of stag and spear, direwolf and giant. Men once sundered by wall and war now bound by blood spilled for a home they all claimed. Winterfell's courtyards rang with hammers mending gates, with children of free folk chasing pups born of kennel stock. Yet every child's laugh echoed against memory of screams, and every hearth reminded all that peace is but a truce between storms. And in the tallest tower, where ravens once perched upon broken masonry, Mance Rayder strummed his lute and composed a song without words. A melody that rose like northern lights above snowbound fields, telling of kings who knelt, of walls unmade, of hope found beside ashes. Winds carried the tune across battlements, down into crypts where stone wolves stirred in sleep, out into white wilds where broken men listened, and far, far beyond, to where ice still walked on dead men's feet and whispered of long nights yet to come. Snow crept over Winterfell's broken roofs, softening jagged ruin into mute white plains that glittered beneath reluctant daylight. 3 mornings had passed since the stag and spear banners first fluttered together above the ramparts, and still the keep exhaled steam like a wounded beast, its hearths coughing up the smoke of half-quenched fires, its stones seeping thaw and blood. Everywhere men worked, some with the steady rhythm of masons, others with the frenetic haste of those who fear the walls may crumble again the instant they turn their backs. Bells rang for funerals and for rations, for council and for curfew, the same dull clang serving each need because nothing yet distinguished death from duty. Jon Snow strode the inner ward with Ghost limping at his heel, a fresh poultice strapped around the direwolf's haunch. Squalls of swirling flakes obscured the far side of the yard, where Giant Mag the Lesser sat grimly beside a toppled tower, bandaged legs stretched out like a felled oak. Free folk spearwives darted between scaffolds to toss him baskets of hot stones, which he cradled for warmth while muttering songs in the old tongue. Black brothers repointed mortar near the battlements just above him, pausing now and then to stare at the living mountain who had smashed these same stones only nights before. Every glance carried wariness, curiosity, awe. No one spoke the distrust aloud, but Jon felt it in the stiff set of shoulders, in the way hands lingered near sword belts when wildlings walked by. At the Godswood Gate he met Val, her cheeks red with cold, her breath a silver plume. She knelt beside a shallow trough of water where 3 shaggy brown goats drank beneath a canvas lean-to. One goat wore a garland of blue winter roses plaited by children. Val said the beast would be sacrificed to ensure the Stark's gods and the free folk's nameless sky spirits found common ground. Jon only nodded. There was no arguing sacrifice now. Too much had been sacrificed already. Together they entered the Godswood. The heart tree's face, crimson sap frozen in tear tracks, regarded them with hollow solemnity. Snow muffled their steps. At the pool beyond, Melisandre stood alone, crimson robes stark against drifts. A tripod brazier hissed at her side, smoke spiraling into boughs. She had driven black iron into the snow to mark a circle around a low stone basin. Within its shallow dish water tremored, though no wind touched the surface. Jon felt Ghost's hackles bristle. "What visions today?" he asked without warmth. "Only the same." Melisandre's voice carried faint echo, as if she spoke with 2 throats. "Cold winds rising, a sword of living flame that walks at dusk, and a wolf, white as winter, guarding a gate of shattered ice." She turned, ruby pulsing. "Your place, Lord Snow, lies beyond mortal ramparts." "I have ramparts here needing me first," Jon answered. "Ramsay is still loose. Roose's leal men may come from the Dreadfort or worse, Carhold. And food stores. The dead have no need for food." She gestured at the water. "Look, the wall cracks in my visions. Not by steel but by silence. Azor Ahai must stand where the crack begins, or all we build here is ashes in drifting snow." Jon took a breath that felt like swallowing ice. "Stannis is your Azor," he said. "Azor Ahai reborn," she corrected softly. "And rebirth wears many masks before the last. I read only the flames. I choose no faces." She dipped gloved fingers into the basin. Ripples blossomed outward, reflecting ghost-pale branches overhead. "Do not linger too long in victories won. They melt." Jon left her words hanging in air like frost and led Val back toward the yard. Behind them, the ruby's glow faded to a dull coal. In the great hall, roof half repaired, tables scavenged from lesser chambers, Stannis Baratheon held court over the spoils of rebellion. The king wore boiled leather beneath a fur-lined cloak of black and crimson velvet. The iron crown resting heavy upon bound hair, frost stiffened at the tips. Beside him, the Queen Celis sat with palms folded in devout quiet, her cheeks hollow with northern chill she could not banish. Princess Shireen, cheeks mottled by grayscale, perched on a stool near the brazier muttering arithmetic sums to Patchface while her foster maid spun wool for new banners. Davos Seaworth read ledgers aloud. Tally of barley sacks salvaged from Wintertown, casks of ale gone sour, swords taken from the dead catalogued for redistribution. Godry Faring and Richard Horp argued allocation of captured horses. A Karstark envoy pleaded leniency for his half-starved kin still camped outside the walls. Stannis weighed each petition with pursed lips, gaveling judgment that risked no mercy and offered no excess. When Jon approached, Stannis dismissed the crowd with a curt wave. "Lord Commander," he said, voice raspy from days of command, "your reports speak of unrest among the free folk." "They bristle at curfew bells," Jon admitted. "They bristle at walls in general. But they remain. They patch our ramparts as readily as their own tents." "They will obey," Celis said, lips thin. "Chaos is a ladder for the devil's works." Davos cleared his throat. "It may help if their chieftains were given voice at council." "The Night's Watch sits. The Lords sit. I sit," Stannis said. "How many voices before the hall is but a clamor?" He fixed Jon with lantern-bright eyes. "Mance Rayder is quiet in these 3 days. I mislike quietness in men accustomed to song." "Mance grieves his dead," Jon said, "and he watches how we treat his living. He'll sing again when trust is mended." "Trust is earned," Stannis muttered. "Tell him I still await his counsel." Mance Rayder lay upon Winterfell's highest roof under a patched sailcloth lean-to, staring at stars that pulsed like distant hearths. The air smelled of pitch and fresh-cut pine from new rafters. His lute rested across his chest. He plucked minor chords, letting the notes drift down chimneys to mingle with hammer clangs and drunkard snores. Jon found him there at midnight's edge, wind slicing through the gap between towers. "Your song will freeze before dawn," Jon called. "I'm practicing silence," Mance said, eyes never leaving sky. "A bard must know silence the way a smith knows cool water." He sat, folding his legs. "Stannis wants words?" "He wants your counsel." Jon sank onto a roof tile opposite. "And your certainty Ramsay won't march back with new allies?" Mance shrugged. "Certainty's a coat never thick enough in winter. But my crows tell me Ramsay rides west into the hills, gathering broken men. No Carhold banners with him. Karstark sons still bicker with damp feet near our fires." Jon traced frost patterns on a tile. "When storms break, we'll need scouts beyond the shivering sea itself. Free folk know the land better than any kneeler. I'll vouch if you'll speak at council." "Stannis sees me as dagger waiting to slip his ribs," Mance said. "Let him. A wise man sleeps with iron at hand." He strummed. "But I'll offer counsel. Only after payment." Jon's brow rose. "You have safe passage and lands south of the wall. What more? Promise me the wall's gate stays open for those still coming. My people wander in 2s and 3s. They will trickle for moons. Some will bring dead behind them if late. Swear I won't find the gate shut because lords fear hungry mouths." Jon clasped his wrists. "So long as I command. And if I fall, the watch still swears the same." "You may need thicker vows," Mance said gently, but he extended a hand. "Done." They clasped wrists beneath starlight, breath pluming. Snowstorms rolled down from Last River, burying supply lines west toward Barrowton. Lady Dustin's spearmen plodded knee-deep, towing sleds of cured pork that spoiled when river ice cracked and drowned them. At council Stannis slammed fist upon map, cursing the weight of winter, but Davos urged diplomacy with White Harbor. If Lord Wyman Manderley would send grain up the King's Road by ship to Torrens Square, the northward roads might yet be passable. "And what bribe will Fat Wyman demand?" Godry asked. "His loyalty wavers like a chimney crow." "Offer justice," Davos said, missing 3 fingertips as he traced the map. "Promise punishment for Freys who murdered King Robb. Promise the North in northern hands again. Promise his son's bones a tomb at home." Stannis's mouth tightened. "An honest bribe. You'll carry it." The next dawn Davos rode south with a column of 30 Queen's men, armored lightly, banners furled to avoid fry eyes along the King's Road. Jon lent him 8 rangers to slip ahead, blades dull-darkened for stealth. A storm of hungry ravens shadowed them until tree line claimed both riders and birds. 3 days later Davos returned alone, blood dried on cracked gauntlets, beard glazed with rime. At council he knelt before Stannis, eyes hollow. Ambush 5 leagues north of Widow's Watch. Fry outriders and Carhold turncloaks. Your grace, I alone broke free. He laid upon the table a sack of boiled leather. Inside rolled 3 heads, 2 Freys, 1 Karstark. Their lips were sewn shut by Manderly's silent sisters. A gift from Lord Wyman, with thanks for warning of traitors within his walls. He swears ships sail within the fortnight. He also sends this. From his cloak Davos produced a parchment sealed with green wax. Stannis cracked it and read aloud. We remember the North, and the North remembers. In turn we ask remembrance. Justice for the red wedding by the king's own hand, else we serve salt and bread to none. Godry spat. He conditions his grain on vengeance. He seeks what many seek, Jon said. I've heard Bear Islanders whisper it, Flint children chant it. The phrase crime festers under every wolf banner. Justice is my right, Stannis said. Manderly will have it after I break the false kings who shelter the phrase. But his eyes flickered to Melisandre, as though prophecy might yet rewrite vengeance in fire. While lords bartered, Ramsay Snow turned the hills red. His riders struck grain wagons bound for Winterfell, slaughtered mules, left teamsters flayed across sled tongues. He torched crofter villages that bent knee to Stannis, carving bloody stags upon doorposts as mockery. Word of each atrocity reached Winterfell upon the mouths of rag-clad refugees. Each report chipped at Stannis's uneasy alliances. Every crofter burned was some petty lord's cousin, some fisherman's brother. Patience thinned. Mance Rayder proposed sending mobile columns of free folk skirmishers, hunters, spearwives, and giants on mammoths, to bait Ramsay into open field where numbers favored them. Ser Godry Faring balked. I will not throw my king's cause behind savages on shaggy beasts. Mance merely laughed. Savages built the first traps when your grandsires still painted shields with berries. Stannis, pressed by failing stores, approved. 3 free folk columns streamed east across blanketed downs, leaving only faint trail of crushed snow. Jon rode with the westernmost band under Tormund Giantsbane, 600 strong, Ghost padding behind. Among them marched 6 Karstark defectors wearing cloaks reversed to gray, faces grim with the betrayal of kin. Through spruce woods they traveled, leaving false tracks to mislead hounds. Nights they slept beneath evergreen boughs while flurries hissed across banked fires. Ghost hunted rabbits. Spearwives gathered pine nuts. One Karstark boy proved deft at catching fish through ice holes by tickling bellies with near-frozen hands. Around shared stews barriers eroded. Black brothers swapped ranger tales with then warriors who scoffed at Kneeler tooth broth. Yet every dawn they remembered purpose, to bleed Ramsay's horror from the land. On the 4th day ravens wheeled overhead in unnatural quiet. No croaks, just the steady beating of wings like distant drums. Jon tasted threat upon wind. He ordered scouts wide. By dusk they reached an abandoned croft at Ridge Crest. Pens broken, soot-charred beams jutting. Snow-filled holes where bodies once lay. Ghost prowled between ashes, sniffing. From the east thunder rolled, hoofbeats. Ramsay's riders crested a parallel slope. 100 horse archers, shields painted with flayed men, hounds baying. They shouted mockery. Wildling mongrels, stark bastards, and crow filth, arrows hissed. A Karstark defector fell, throat feathered. Tormund's eyes flashed like foxfire. Time to dance. He blew his horn thrice. Giants hidden among tree shadows trumpeted in reply. Mammoths barreled from concealment onto riders' flanks, snow pluming around shaggy haunches. Horses reared, dogs shrieked beneath crushing feet. Ramsay's men wheeled, loosing shafts that thunked into mammoth hide like pins into oaken doors. Jon led rangers around the croft's rear, scaling rocky crags to fire down. Ghost lunged into panicked horses, hamstringing. The melee churned white ground to crimson slush. Somewhere Ramsay's laugh pierced air. Delighted, manic. Jon glimpsed him astride a black courser, face half hidden by mailed hood, cracking a whip above hounds. He seemed less man than Shrike. Jon spurred upslope, Longclaw singing. Ramsay saw the Stark blade and spurred opposite, trailing dogs. 2 spear wives closed. Ramsay slashed one across eyes, kicked the other under his horse's belly. Jon followed, snow squalls swirling like ghosts between them. Ramsay vaulted a fallen tree. Jon's mare stumbled upon blood-slick bark but recovered. Wind tore at cloaks. At a narrow defile of jutting rocks, Ramsay wheeled. A net weighted with barbed hooks flew from his saddlebag, unfurling mid-air. Jon jerked reins. Net grazed his shoulder, snagging cloak. Cloth ripped. He rolled free, Longclaw flashing to cut strands. Ramsay's whip snapped toward Jon's face. Jon ducked, felt leather scorch ear. He surged forward. Their blades met. Ramsay's hooked flaying knife screeching against Valyrian steel. Sparks jetted. They exchanged 6 strokes. The 7th Ramsay sidestepped, slicing Jon's thigh. Jon answered with riposte, blade tip cutting Ramsay's cheek to bone. Blood sprayed bright upon snow. Ramsay howled laughter, lashed again. Jon parried, but Ramsay's knee drove into his gut, knocking wind. Ghost lunged snarling from side, clamping jaws on Ramsay's whip arm. Ramsay shrieked fury. Dagger slashed, but Direwolf's weight bore him off saddle, pinning him. Jon staggered up, pressing wound. Around them the battle waned. Riders fled north, pursued by mammoths trumpeting. Ghost snarled, teeth deep in Ramsay's forearm. Ramsay gurgled curses, dagger twitching. Jon raised Longclaw, paused as memory of Eddard's words surfaced. The man who passes the sentence should swing the sword. Yet Ramsay's life was Stannis' sentence now, and Northmen's justice. Yield, Jon said, voice raw. Ramsay spat blood, lips peeled back in grin. Flay me? Neuter me? You'll find no secrets, bastard. I've writ them on skins across the north. He twisted. Dagger nicked Ghost's muzzle. The direwolf yelped, jaws loosening. Ramsay rolled beneath horse carcass, disappearing into crevice between boulders. Jon lunged, but blackness swallowed Ramsay. From depths came echo of laughter dwindling like embers swept down chimney. Ghost whined. Jon knelt, stroking blood-flecked fur. His own thigh bled but clotted. In the clearing below, Tormund raised horn triumphant. 40 Bolton riders lay dead or maimed, hounds scattered, but Ramsay once more slipped the snare. The column returned to Winterfell bearing wounded and captured mounts. Jon's band had lost 11. 2 giants, 5 spearwives, for rangers. They buried them in the new northern cemetery where Stark kings of old once planted their banners after victory. Mance joined the rites, singing a low Valyrian plainsong learned in his stolen years south of the wall. Snow fell like funeral petals. Later Jon limped to the rookery where ravens croaked for duskfeed. Maester Tybalt, sent north by Sam Tarly from the Citadel months before, checked Ghost's stitched flank. He spoke of medicine, of honey salves and willow bark, but his eyes flickered to Jon's bandaged thigh with concern unspoken. Winter defies all cures, Tybalt murmured. Keep the wound warm. Fever steals fleet as a thief in crowded hall. Jon managed a tired smile. Crowded hall we have, at least. Ravens fluttered. One albino bird pecked threads of Jon's sleeve as if seeking weft of fate. 7 days after the skirmish, 5 ships' masts pierced gray horizon beyond Torrens Square. White Harbor grain arrived under Manderley banners, escorted by 15 Sellsail longships bearing green apple sigils of the Galladon Company. Lord Wyman himself rode north in a creaking litter drawn by 6 oxen, claiming the gout forbade saddle. Northmen lined the King's Road cheering. Hunger breeds easy loyalty to grain. At Winterfell's rebuilt East Gate, Wyman emerged, vast of girth, jowls quivering like pudding, wrapped in white otter fur trimmed with sea-green silk. He knelt with surprising grace before Stannis. Your Grace, the Manderleys bend the knee thrice over, for bread, for blood, and for vengeance. Stannis raised him. Your grain earns you seat at my council. Your vengeance we shall seek in due course. Due course must be swift, Wyman said, eyes flinty. Fry banners mass at the crossing. Lord Walder sends word that Stannis Baratheon is Oathbreaker, harboring turncloaks. He readies new host. The neck will choke on fry steel before spring. Stannis looked to map. Then we strike before they gather. Mance leaned over table. Strike with what, grain cart horses? Your knights freeze in saddles. Free folk no boats, not siege towers. We strike clever, Davos said. Cut the fry throat at its narrow. We hold Moat Cailin, pinch the King's Road. Walder will find no path for his baggage trains. Moat Cailin lies flooded, Jon warned. Causeways sink. Summer last I rode them, we lost 3 mounts. Giants build causeways, Tormund grinned. Stone and trees and dead frays stacked high. Stannis nodded. Then we march. Plans drawn. Mance proposed one further gambit. Send ravens far and wide inviting northern houses to Winterfell for a great council to name the North's protector. Stannis will stand of course, but let Karstark, Mormont, Ryswell, Reed speak. I'll speak for free folk. You Snow speak for wolves. We show them this union is not shackles but shield. Stannis frowned. Politics grated. But Davos argued wisdom. Lords follow their banners. Small folk follow their bellies. But all follow stories. Let them see themselves in one hall. Reluctantly Stannis consented. Invitations flew on raven wings. Flurries sealed rutted tracks. Sledges groaned across drifts, carrying lords under patchwork banners. The great hall filled with kaleidoscope of sigils. Tall pine of House Glover, swords crossed of House Tallheart, rushing boars of House Ryswell. Even lords sworn long to Boltons came grudging, Serwins, Hornwoods, drawn by rumor of grain or fear of burnt villages. Stannis sat his chair of weirwood and brass upon the dais. Beside him the ancient direwolf of Stark carved from cedar stood sentinel. Mance's gift, carved by free folk artisans overnight as token of respect. Melisandre's ruby glowed behind the king's shoulder, silent witness. Davos opened council with plain speech. Winter's knives cut all throats equal. The wall's fall would drown lords and free folk alike. Unity was flame. Wyman Manderly followed, recounting the Wolf King's justice of old, the butchery of the twins, tears in his jowls and fire in his eyes. He named each fry murdered at the Red Wedding and each Stark pup slain. Every name rippled through hall like tolling bell. Mance rose, cloak of raven feathers shimmering. I am Mance, son of the haunted forest, king of no throne but the open sky. I have bled with you. My giants lie in your graveyards. My spearwives nurse your orphans. We ask no kneeling, only a common foe and a common fire. He told of the others. Eyes blue as starvation, swords that raised dead kin against living. Some lords scoffed. More fell silent, remembering wives' tales told by hearth. Jon spoke last. He wore no crown, only black cloak mended with white wolf fur. He told them of nights on Frostfangs where dead men walked, of the fist of the first men and the scream of horn at dawn. He told of children given to shadows, of ravens that fell stone still from sky in terror. He ended thus, I am son of Eddard Stark by blood or by love, the Wall's brother, Winterfell's nephew. I slew Corran half-hand to save the Watch. I bled with wildlings to save the living. I stand by this king because he stands between night and us. Stand with us, or kneel later to corpses who do not kneel back. Silence held. Then Meege Mormont's daughter Jarell banged axe to shield. 3 ringing blows. Bear Island remembers, she shouted, voice cracking with youth and fury. Other lords echoed. Ryswell horns to table, Glovers brandishing spears. The hall erupted. When noise subsided, Stannis rose. By acclamation, he said, eyes burning with stern pride. I am declared protector of the North until Eddard Stark's trueborn heir is found or named. In that duty I swear by steel and by flame to war against the treacherous Freys, to hunt Ramsay Snow, to hold winter at bay, and to keep the wall standing while breath fills my lungs. Cheers met oath, yet beneath cheers murmured new intrigues. What if Sansa lived, or Arya, or Rickon? What of Jon Snow himself? Stannis perhaps sensed undercurrents, for his gaze lingered on Jon longer than courtesy demanded. Melisandre touched Jon's elbow as crowd dispersed. "You glow bright as salt-soaked brand," she whispered. "Beware shadows cast by your light." Jon drew arm away. "Shadows have long memories, lady." Marching orders followed quick. Stannis led half the host south toward Moat Cailin. Queen's men, Karstark levies sworn anew, knights of House Flint, giants and mammoths. Mance commanded raiding parties sweeping west to lock Frey foragers in ever-narrowing circles. Jon remained at Winterfell to garrison with Glover, Manderly, and wildling youth still too raw for field. He spent nights patrolling walls, listening to stone groan beneath creeping frost. One midnight he found Theon Greyjoy, clad in black smith leathers, coaxing a brazier in the kennels where hounds once mauled him. Theon's hands trembled as he inserted steel rivets into a new hinge for broken gate bars. Jon studied the ghost of the man Theon had been. Hollow cheeks, beard ragged, eyes like cracks in sea ice. "You should sleep," Jon said. Theon jerked, hinge clattering. "Sleep brings dreams. Hounds have teeth in dreams." Jon crouched. "Stannis could use spies cloaked as dead men. Ramsay thinks you rotted. Ride with my rangers east, find Carhold strength. Send word whether Arnulf yet holds his sons or if they march for Freys." Theon's gaze flickered like candle in draught. "A task." He exhaled fog. "Tasks bind bones together again." He slid hinge into brazier, sparks rising. "I will ride at dawn." Jon nodded. As he turned to leave, Theon spoke faint. "Tell your sister Sansa I tried." Jon paused. "When I find her, I will." Weeks ground by under monotony of repairs, ration drills, raven flights. Letters from Stannis spoke of triumphant skirmishes near the Weeping Water. Frey outriders drowned in bog traps, giants dragging causeway stones into place. Yet another raven bore darker script. Ser Richard Horp fell to bolt through eye, crossbowmen hidden within bog reeds under Frey colors disguised as ironwood shrubs. Stannis wrote of flaying prisoners in answer. Jon's gut tightened reading. Snow deepened. Trees snapped under weight. One dawn witnessed sky green-black. Frost so fierce ravens' feet froze to perch bars until Maesters freed them with warm wine. Melisandre spoke of signs. The long night measures its cloak. She visited ramparts nightly, staring north while Ruby pulsed. On the last night of deep frost, Mance returned blood-spattered, leading 20 survivors from his 60 raiders. They staggered across drawbridge at dawn, faces white. Jon rushed to meet him. "Pale men," Mance gasped. "We saw deep into lonely hills near Widow's Watch, fell upon Frey patrol. But there came another host beyond them. Not Freys, not men. Shadows clothed in hoarfrost, eyes colder than moon. They walked among silent wolves, dead wolves." His voice cracked. "We killed the Freys. The shadows killed 20 of us before we ran." Jon felt cold deeper than winter bite. "How far?" 2 days' march south of the Gift," Mance whispered. "Closer than any tale." Within the hour, Jon convened captains. Ravens flew to Stannis, to the wall's remnants, to White Harbor urging immediate convocation. But ravens may fly slower than death's stride. Night fell violet. Jon stood upon Winterfell's outer parapet, ghost at side, watching northern horizon where curtains of aurora flared green then bled to crimson as if the sky itself burned. Snowflakes drifted like falling embers, not white, but gray ash. In that eerie glow Jon glimpsed shapes moving far beyond Treeline. A ripple of pale forms nearly invisible against drifts, silent as regret. Ghost growled low for rising. Jon placed hand on warm flank. He thought of Melisandre's words, of flames that melted walls, of swords that woke in darkness. Longclaw hung heavy, its Valyrian steel almost humming. Within gates men roused at horns, 3 blasts, the signal for others. Free folk scrambled to arms. Black brothers leapt from hammocks. Giant Mag the Lesser heaved himself upright despite wounded knee. Archers lined walls, torches dipping. Children herded into crypts. Jon breathed slow. Winterfell stones remembered older wars, older kings. Tonight they must remember again. He raised sword skyward, blade catching Aurora's fractured glow, and shouted one word that echoed across gust-torn courtyards. "Stand!" Men answered. Wildling screams, Manderly horns, the drum of Glover fists on shields. Snow gusted harder. Torches flickered, and in winds howled Jon almost heard laughter. The high, thin crackle of ice fracturing. Battle would come before dawn. South, Stannis sieged Moat Cailin. North, the dead approached a castle not meant for living men. Yet Winterfell's heart tree stood still in Godswood, red tears frozen, as though even old gods held their breath. Jon tightened grip on Longclaw. He had bled for winter before. He would bleed again. Around him, wall stones exhaled steam into frigid dark, like the lungs of a giant waking from centuries of slumber. The first pale figures stepped from tree line onto open snow, silent drums of frost. Long night falling, long day to fight. Yet the men of Winterfell, kneelers and wildlings, giants and boys, bastards and broken princes, stood ready beneath banners of stag, spear, and dire wolf entwined, flames at their backs and snow at their feet, to wager blood against the chill of oblivion. And somewhere within those ranks, a bard tuned a battered lute, fingers stiff but sure, seeking a chord to outsing the silence of the grave. The strings thrummed as arrows took flight, and Winterfell's night filled once more with fire and song. Snow swirled in mad spirals across the courtyard as torches were snatched by the gale and winked into darkness. A hush, brittle as ice on still water, blanketed the ramparts. Jon Snow tightened his fingers around Longclaw's hilt until the silver pommel wolf seemed to snarl beneath his glove. Below the walls, a tide of moon-pale figures advanced, their movements a silent, terrible harmony. They made no clamor of shield or boot. Only the wind keened through rents in their flesh, and the brittle chime of frost-rimmed mail rang faintly whenever one brushed another. At the gatehouse, Bear Island archers knocked fire arrows. The shafts hissed outward in scarlet arcs, but most were plucked from the air by spears of bluish glass flicked with inhuman speed. The few that landed glanced off icy helms or lodged smoking in snow, guttering uselessly. A giant's great bough thrummed once, loosing an ashwood trunk fletched with dog skins. It slammed through 4 whites and vanished into the mass. The corpses toppled, yet rose staggering as the bronze point juddered free, limbs hanging by threads of rime. Jon shouted for oil. Barrels were heaved to the parapet, stoppers torn, black viscous streams gurgling down the murder holes. A lantern followed, shattering, blooming orange along the base of the wall. Flame whooshed up the stone, and the first ranks of dead burned. But others climbed over their shrieking brethren, boots crunching charred bone into cinders. Ghost bounded along the battlements, white fur stark against night, muzzle gleaming with fresh blood where he had torn a white's throat. The dire wolf paused beside Jon, hackles high, then hurled himself onto a ladder cresting the wall walk. Timber splintered, ladder toppled, and undead spilled like kindling into the moat of fire. Yet more ladders rose. From the inner yard, Mance Rayder's lute rang, a fierce, jangling cadence, part war drum, part lament. Spearwives roared back the tune. Thens pounded shield rims with bronze axes. The gates shuddered under fists of the dead. Giants inside braced the crossbeam, straining, while maesters coated the timber in flaming pitch so that each blow left the attacker's knuckles ablaze. A sudden silence fell. The dead drew back. Through drifting sparks stalked 4 tall shadows armored in rippling plates of hoarfrost wrought like scale. Their eyes glowed a luminous cobalt. One raised an arm, and the fires nearest the gate, built from whole wagons soaked in whale oil, hissed and guttered until flames shrank to blue, then winked out entirely. Frost spidered up the wood. Smoke froze in mid-curl and fell in delicate shards. Behind Jon, bows faltered. Cold seeped through wool and leather, numbing wrists, clanging teeth. Melisandre appeared beside the gatehouse brazier, scarlet skirts whipping, ruby blazing like a captive comet. She chanted in a tongue that rasped like coal cracking. The brazier's coals flared white. She thrust both hands into the fire and drew forth a living brand, crimson and molten. With a single motion, she hurled it toward the tallest other. The fire streaked across the night, but the other glanced a latticework blade and split the brand to a spray of dying sparks. Blue eyes fixed on the red woman. Frost coalesced around Melisandre's feet. The ruby at her throat pulsed frantic crimson, dimmed, then burst, showering hot rubies across the snow. She gasped, staggering, palms smoking. Jon leapt. Descending the inner stair in 3 bounds, he reached her as she collapsed. Steam rose from scorched flesh. Her eyes, once furnace-bright, clouded. "Not my hour," she whispered, more question than statement. Jon hauled her to shade of the Merlin. Ghost barred the stair, growling at the advancing cold. With Melisandre spent, the flame that burned in oil troughs guttered low. Jon shouted for more pitch, more torches. But already ice crept across the stone underfoot, gluing boots in place. Another hurled a spear of clear glass tipped with swirling mist. The weapon zipped over the parapet and impaled a Karstark archer through breast and crenel, pinning his body like a moth. The corpse froze instant, skin blanching to crystal. Jon's next command died in his throat. The cruelty of the scene left the living mute. Then a horn sounded deep, booming, familiar. On the far side of Winterfell's curtain wall, the Hunter's Gate flew open. Out thundered mammoths beneath a storm of flaming javelins. Stannis Baratheon had returned, ahead of his host, having ridden all night with 100 mounted lancers and 3 of Mance's giants to relieve the keep. Behind him clattered Davos Seaworth, battered sigil shorn but sword flashing. The riders plowed into the flank of the undead throng, hooves grinding ice-slick ribs to snow powder. Giant Mag the Lesser, leg bandaged tight, lumbered with an uprooted pine lit with torches bound along its length, swinging arcs of wildfire that set undead ablaze. The others wheeled, surprise flickering across their emotionless faces. One threw an arm wide. The dead nearest Stannis stiffened, then detonated in gusts of snow, forcing horses to rear and crash back upon sleet. Another other stepped toward Mag, blade carving trails of frost. The giant swung his burning pine. Frost blade met flame, and with a sound like screaming glass the tree shattered, sending burning shards whirling. The giant's roar shook ramparts. His weapon gone, Mag snatched the other bodily. Frost raced up his arms. Flesh cracked. Yet with last strength he crushed the tall figure into splinters of ice and fell dead upon the ruins. Stannis dismounted amidst the carnage, black steel glowing red in torchlight, crown of stag antlers rhymed in hoarfrost. He strode toward the nearest other, bearing Lightbringer, the sword Melisandre had once anointed but whose dull copper glow never quickened. Tonight, though the blade shimmered faintly, pale, hesitant, the other regarded the king, raised its weapon. Jon, above, saw Lightbringer flicker as though uncertain. He felt a pang of terror. If the sword failed now, all hope shattered with it. He turned to descend, but Ghost snarled a warning. Another ladder topped the parapet. Wights clambered, whitening blades in skeletal hands. Jon met them, Valyrian steelbit, heads sheared, bodies toppled to shatter like glass statues on cobble. All the while, from the corner of his eye, he tracked Stannis' duel below. Steel met crystal with a clang that stung teeth. Frost haloed both blades. Each time Lightbringer struck, a peach glow flared, then dimmed. The other moved with unearthly economy, every slash silent, every parry accompanied by a crackling frost that crept along Stannis' mailed sleeves. On the third pass, ice burst across the king's shoulder. He staggered, cloak stiffening. The creature slid blade tip toward the gap at Stannis' neck, and a whistling chorale of steel sang from nowhere. Mance Rayder's sword, an old castle-forged longsword, scavenged at the wall, cut down from atop a wounded mammoth's brow. The blade caught at the other's wrist. Castle steel should have shattered, but the moment of contact rang deeper than iron, as though something older recognized the foe. Bright white fissures spidered through the icy weapon. It burst to dust. The other recoiled. Mance flipped down from the mammoth's crown, landed beside Stannis, feet sliding. The king frowned, half in disdain, half in surprise. "Fall back," he rasped. "Not while the song's unfinished," Mance answered, voice raw. He thrust forward. The creature slipped aside like a breath of cold. Its gauntlet slammed Mance's ribs. Stannis stepped, Lightbringer sweeping. Tip pierced the thing's breast. A flash, searing white, erupted, knocking both men aside. When snow cleared, there remained only a puddle of steaming frost and brittle shards that melted to nothing. Across the field, the remaining others observed. Two raised arms. The dead twitched en masse, pausing mid-charge, then pivoted towards Stannis and Mance. Wave upon wave converged, a white sea rolling to drown flame. Jon perceived the pivot. He saw the harried defenders on the walls gasp. If the king fell, morale would shatter. He whistled. Ghost streaked down the steps, leaping battlements, bounding through broken gates. Jon followed, ankle-deep in drifting ash and snow, breath burning. Around him the yard teemed with duels. Spearwives fought back-to-back with black brothers. Then axes sang. Manderly pikes braced against skeletal bears whose hides hung like tapestries of cracked porcelain. Halfway across the yard, Jon collided with Davos. Sword arm knotted around a cracked shield. The giants broke open a white pen. The Onion Knight shouted. "They're spilling in through the ale cellars. Seal it." Jon parried a thrust from a scarecrow white, spine bent unnatural. "We hold the inner ward. Hold the king," Davos corrected, then dashed south. Jon pushed on. He reached Stannis and Mance on a mound of bodies, flesh and ice alike. Everywhere around them blade met bone, but the dead kept coming. Mance's sword was chipped. Stannis's glow dimmed, flaring only when it bit true. Jon slashed whites from the flank, clearing momentary space. Stannis's eyes met Jon's across carnage. "The cold ones," he barked. "Valyrian steel." "Only 4 blades here," Jon answered, gasping. "2 here, 1 at the wall, 1 lost." His mind flashed to Brienne wandering the riverlands with Oathkeeper. "We make do." Mance spat blood. "Songs say dragonglass kills them too." "We have none," Jon said. Stannis's blade flickered as another other advanced. Platinum hair drifting in still air, crown of ice horns. The creature pointed its spear at Lightbringer, murmured in a language like cracking ice flows. Frost spiraled faster up the copper blade, webbing the fuller. The light dimmed further. Jon understood. The weapon was losing battle. He thrust Longclaw up to crossguard, meeting the spear point. The Valyrian steel turned aside the glass. At contact, white smoke hissed. The other recoiled. "It's blue." Gaze flicked from Jon to Stannis, a wariness there. It whirled spear in a blur, lashing twice. Jon parried once. Second thrust pierced his left pauldron, grazing flesh. Cold unlike any winter knife through him. He shoved free, panting wicked vapor. Ghost appeared, hurling himself on the spear haft. Teeth met ice. A sound like stone fracturing. The shaft split. The other backhanded the wolf, sending Ghost skidding over corpses. Jon roared, hammered Longclaw down as Stannis thrust upward. Spear shattered fully. The other stumbled. Flames guttered along the king's blade. Longclaw whined through air. They struck simultaneously. Copper through breast, black steel through neck. The other burst into shards, its armor collapsing inward with a sound like a glacier calving. Shards melted to fog. A collective cry rose from defenders, half astonishment, half triumph. The remaining others cast glances at one another. Their dead kept fighting, but the unbreakable order of their assault had faltered. Mance laughed, wild and ragged. "Even the cold fears fire and song," he shouted. Stannis wiped frost from cheek. The copper blade glimmered brighter, as though each kill kindled ember. "No songs," he grunted. "Only steel." But Melisandre's voice floated weakly from the stair. "King's fire grows," she rasped. "Every shadow slain feeds the blade. You must break them now before dawn, or they return multiplied." Jon glanced east. Sky remained starless, false dawn hours away. "Then we charge," he said. Stannis nodded once. He signaled. Glover horns brayed, gates heaved wider. From the tunnel thundered Manderly cavalry. Heavy destriers caparisoned in sea green, lances bound with torches. Behind them rumbled makeshift sledges pulled by oxen, stacked with barrels of wildfire seized from Stannis' ships. Davos had returned to orchestrate the mad plan. Mammoths, their hides smeared with lard and straw, lumbered alongside. Giant riders, only 4 remained, held poles tipped with burning pitch. The living wedge drove straight at the knot of remaining others. Whites swarmed to intercept, but wildfire barrels were toppled and smashed by hammer blows. Green flame cascaded, flowing like liquid emerald among the dead. Where it touched, whites became torches. The fire clung, ignorant of snow. The air filled with stench of burning rot and muscles shriveling to ash. 2 others leapt the flames, sleek as ice panthers, blades poised for Stannis' heart. Mance Rayder met one, broken sword replaced by a stolen spear with a head of black dragonglass hammered onto iron. He lunged. The tip kissed the creature's cuirass and sank with no resistance. The other froze mid-strike, then shattered inward like a mirror struck by hammer. The dragonglass spear did not break. Mance howled savage glee. The final other cut through 3 knights, frost blade trailing screams. Jon engaged, Longclaw answering with shriek of its own. They circled in a dance too swift for defenders to track. Black steel and clear ice forging sparks of silver frost. Jon's thigh wound burned, cold gnawing upward. Each parry took strength he no longer had. The other saw weakness, pressed. Blade tip nicked Jon's brow, freezing sweat to shards. Stannis appeared, cloak aflame at hem, Lightbringer roaring now with true fire, copper turned glowing orange. He thrust under the other's guard. The creature parried, but the heated blade steamed frost away, biting into crystal guard. Jon seized the opening, swung overhead. Longclaw cleaved the other from collar to hip. Brilliant light erupted. Both men staggered, heat washing like forge blast. When vision cleared, shards melted at their boots. Where the last other fell, a tremor rippled through the whites. They halted mid-strike, jaws gaped, frost glaze wept from sockets. One by one they collapsed, strings cut, leaving courtyards piled with stillness. Silence took Winterfell save for crackle of wildfire and moans of wounded. Mance's laughter subsided into hoarse coughs. Ghost limped back to Jon's side, muzzle black with soot. Jon knelt, forehead against the direwolf's, relief flooding until tears threatened to freeze on lashes. Stannis surveyed the havoc. Not victory, he rasped. A reprieve. Melisandre crawled to the shattered ruby fragments. She scooped them, bloodied palms closing. The sword awakened, she whispered. Azor lives in flame. See how it burns. Indeed, Lightbringer glowed fierce as sunrise now, yet Jon sensed Stannis' doubt. The king turned to Jon. We will rebuild, but next time the wall will not stand to warn us. We march north at first thaw, or we carve passes through the snow, Davos said, arriving, face smeared with ash. Build sledges and drag fire with us. We go, Stannis agreed. Jon sheathed Longclaw, wincing at frostbitten skin. We need every house, he said, every mountain clan, every galley from the sisters, every spear in the gift. A new great ranging. Mance chuckled. Make your lord swear to a crow and a wildling king? That's a song I'd sell my lute to hear. He sobered. But I'll sing it. My people will march. Stannis fixed him with iron stare. Sing truth, not flattery. Tell them winter's devil walks. If they falter, they won't. Mance extended bloody hand. Stannis hesitated, then clasped it. Ice cracked where their gauntlets met, falling in bright shards like shattered crowns. Dawn crept over the ruined keep, pale and reluctant. Fires guttered to embers. Smoke lifted straight into windless sky as if drawn by unseen hands. Survivors dragged bodies to a pyre field beyond the broken western gate. Whites separate from the fallen living. By midday, green fire consumed the undead remains, and thick black smoke marked their passage from world. In the gods wood Jon knelt before the heart tree, rubbing salve into Ghost's wounds. Branches stirred though no wind moved them. He whispered names of the dead. Mag the Lesser, Karstark boys redeemed, spearwives who died guarding the granary door. Snowflakes drifted like white feathers, landing upon the direwolf's nose. Ghost sneezed, shook, and lay head in Jon's lap. Footsteps approached. Lady Val and Princess Shireen, the latter bundled in furs too large yet determinately carrying a sheaf of parchments. "Father asked me to tally the dead," she said solemnly. "Ser Davos taught me numbers." Jon accepted her list, throat tight. He scanned rows: 57 free folk, 42 Northmen, 14 Queen's men, 1 giant, 1 red priestess marked injured but living. "We'll honor each," he said. Shireen nodded, turning to Val. "Mother says the godswood is for old gods only, but I think any god who listens is good."
Val smiled gently.
"The gods have many ears, little princess. Some are in trees." Shireen touched a root, unafraid. "Will the bad snowmen come back?" Jon met Val's eyes. "They will," he answered truthfully, "but not tonight." 2 nights later, ravens returned from Moat Cailin with tidings. Stannis' baggage, left with the larger force, had repelled a Frey assault thanks to timely arrival of reed marshboats gliding through flooded bogs. The Frey vanguard lay in the water, armor dragging them into peat. Lord Walder's main host, slowed by snows, was yet days south of the Neck. The king commanded Winterfell to marshal fresh supplies. He would harry the Freys, then turn north with whatever strength remained. Jon convened council in the Great Hall, roof patched anew. He stood beside Stannis' seat but did not sit. Lords Glover, Ryswell, and Manderley attended via raven letters. Fear of further attacks kept them at their holdings. Lady Meage Mormont's daughters arrived in person, Bruce's Prouts. Free folk chieftains clustered opposite Karstarks, yet tension between them had thawed in the shared fire of battle. Jon laid out a plan. Rebuild the wall's abandoned castles, at least 3 as relay forts. Send ranging parties to locate caches of dragonglass whispered to lie beneath the Glover's old quarry and in caves of Skagos. Reopen pact with Iron Bank for grain shipments through White Harbor. Dispatch maesters to scour Citadel records for spells of true fire and Valyrian forging lore. Each house took a charge. Few protested. Melisandre, palms still bandaged in silk, entered last. She addressed the gathering with voice hoarse yet fervent. "The night we broke was but the shadow of dawn. The true night yet slumbers beyond the shivering sea. I saw it, a star falling, trailing frost. We must bring dragons of fire to meet it." "Dragons are dead," Meage Mormont snorted. "Some say," Melisandre answered, eyes on Jon. "Others read signs of eggs quickening in stone." Jon felt heat rise unbidden. Memory of tales Dalla once told him of dragon barrows under Skagos. He pushed thought aside. Dragons or no, we fight with what lives. The council adjourned at moonrise. In the quiet that followed, Jon patrolled the ramparts a final time. Ghost limped beside, ears twitching at distant owls. Fresh watchfires burned along the walls. Silhouettes of free folk and Karstarks mingled, sharing flasks. Snow drifted, but the air no longer reeked of terror, only of wood smoke and weary hope. Below, in the courtyard, Mance Rayder sat cross-legged amid carpenters framing a new stable, his lute balanced on knee. He plucked a gentle melody, no rousing battle hymn, but something wistful, a song of hearths glimpsed through snowy windows, of strangers trading names beside the same fire. The notes drifted up to Jon like warm breath in cold dark. Jon rested hands on icy Merlin and let the music wash over him. Far to the north, beyond forest and ruin, the night was surely knitting itself together again, scheming new horrors. But here, for the span of a song, Winterfell stood whole. Banners of stag and direwolf snapped side by side, and the wall, though cracked, still stood, waiting. He touched the hilt of Longclaw, blade still stained where other blood had steamed. Its edge caught torch glow, sending shards of light out into snow-laden dark like beacons. Somewhere beyond that dark, he knew, footsteps of death were already turning back south. Yet tomorrow they would ride north to meet them, and the day after, and however many dawns remained in the world. Jon whispered to the night, "We are the shield that guards." The words drifted on wind, lost, yet the heart tree seemed to lean closer, listening. Snow continued to fall, soft, relentless, indifferent. But in the stillness Jon felt within his chest a fire kindle that no frost could quench. The long night was coming, and beneath battered ramparts of ancient stone, mankind, patched together with spear-wife cloth and knight's mail, stitched with new oaths and old songs, was ready to meet it.